program, we just want to give you a rundown of the highlights of the activities for today, which will include a series of presentations from the representatives of our different government agencies.
We shall now proceed with the opening ceremonies.
Again, good morning. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Welcome to the National Summit on Disaster Risk Reduction and Management for Local Executives. We shall now begin with an ecumenical prayer to be led by Captain Mujib Lajabuan, Chaplain Service, Philippine Army, and Second Lieutenant Father Joey Sepe of the Duty Chaplain of the GHQ AFP. After the prayer, please remain standing for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
You may now all be seated.
The Honorable Secretary of National Defense, Voltaire D. Gazmin. The Honorable Undersecretary Eduardo D of the ILG. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Secretary of National Defense and Chairperson of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, the Honorable Voltaire D. Gazmin, I am honored to acknowledge all of you in this National Summit on Disaster Risk Reduction and Management. Let me therefore recognize our distinguished guests. We have from the Congress, Attorney J.J. Mendoza, representing Senator Lacson, the Chairman of the Senate National Defense and Security Committee. We also have Governor Rosario of Davao del Norte and Governor of Davao. The Honorable Mayor Oscar Rodriguez of the City of San Fernando, Pampanga. Donato Marcos of the Municipality of Bulacan. From the 44 member agencies organizations of NDRRMC, Rear Admiral Cecil Chen of the Philippine Coast Guard for disaster response, members of the academy and civil society organizations from the international donor agencies, disaster risk reduction, as we acknowledge your presence in today's National Summit. Your unwavering support and significant contributions to disaster management are a source of inspiration as we all take the challenge of keeping our people safe and adaptive to climate change. Let us continue to work together towards a disaster-resilient
Philippines. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary Del Rosario. As we now move on with the ceremonies, the Undersecretary for Local Government of the Department of Interior and Local Government will now deliver the welcome address on behalf of the DILG Secretary and Vice Chairperson for Disaster Preparedness, NDRRMC, Honorable Mar A. Rojas. Please welcome Honorable Undersecretary Austere A. Panadero.
The Honorable Secretary of National Defense and Chair of the NDRRMC, Honorable Voltaire, Gazmin, sir. Honorable Undersecretary Rosario, Administrator, OCD, Executive Director, NDRRMC. Our Honorable Governors, our Honorable Governors of the Davao Norte, of Rosario, Cora, of Davao Oriental, Gov. D, and of course the President of the Union of Local Authorities of the Philippines and President LEP, Gov. Boy, Omali, Mindoro, from the other branches of government, colleagues from the national government agencies, friends from the media, the DRRM hosts, the different local governments who visited us also last week and are here as well today together with the principals. A pleasant morning to all of you. At the outset, I would like to give you an overview of what our activity is all about and why we are doing this. Last December 12, 2012, after the onslaught of Typhoon Pablo, President Aquino issued 7 directives to the NDRRMC, and one of the President's instructions is to conduct a national summit for local chief executives so as to review and elucidate what are the key challenges and the roles of everyone in disaster risk reduction and management. So, in preparation for the National Summit, we held a 4-day pre-summit activity last March 12 to 15, here also at the PICC. Among the participants in the 4-day event were local chief executives as well, local disaster risk reduction and management officers, members of the International Humanitarian Country Team, national government agencies, the academy, and our partners from non-government and civil society organizations. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagdalo ng nakaraang pre-summit. The pre-summit provided us an opportunity to identify and clarify once again the roles and responsibilities of everyone in the local level and at the national level in the overall effort of disaster risk reduction and management. We will also privilege to have learned from the best practices of disaster-resilient LGUs, such as the province of Albay, the city of Iligan, the municipalities of San Jose de Buena Vista in Antique, Imbal in Iloilo, and San Francisco in Cebu, and a barangay poblacion in Tupi, South Cotabato. It also gave us an occasion to revisit DRRM tools and templates which were presented by the DOST, PAG-ASA, and other national government agencies. Also discussed during the last week's activity were the joint memorandum circular on the allocation and utilization of LDRRM fund, which will be presented this afternoon, and the declaration of commitment to DRRM action for the local chief executives. The joint memorandum, which will be presented by the Secretaries of National Defense, Interior and Local Government, and Budget Management, seeks to ensure greater transparency and accountability in the utilization of the DRRM resources, while the declaration of commitment to the DRRM action spells out the obligations of everyone at the local level, including our local chief executives. In the past week, we have been briefed about the framework, the needs of our communities, and the disaster responses that we have to institutionalize in our various communities. Now, it is our job to reinforce these plans and translate them into actions. The urgency of disaster preparedness begs everyone to come to the table and take part in a top-to-bottom transformation within every Filipino community. We can no longer afford to get caught unprepared by any calamity. We have been scarred enough by tragic experiences brought about by recent disasters. We need to keep raising the bar so that we can get better and better at dealing with natural and man-made catastrophes. While we have the plans and strategies to adapt to disasters and climate change, we have to remember that the real challenge still awaits us. The fact that these plans still have to be implemented through the consolidated efforts of stakeholders. We want these plans to materialize into actual project and concrete action steps seen and felt by our people. Through this activity, we hope to increase the numbers of prepared and resilient communities in the coming years. So without much ado, we would like again to welcome you all to this national summit. Thank you for taking time to be with us today. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Undersecretary Panadero. The Risk Reduction and Management Council, the Honorable Voltaire T. Gazmin.
Kindly be seated. Yusek Eduardo D. Rosario, Administrator OCD, Yusek Panadero of DILG, fellow workers in our National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, fellow public servants, mga kababayan. As the chairperson of our NDRRMC, I am glad to note of your enthusiastic attendance in our national summit today. I am confident that with your active participation in this meeting, we can be assured of the formulation of the best courses of action that we should implement in addressing national disasters and calamities. With our unity of purpose and clarity of direction, we can be confident in achieving sustainable development through a very dynamic and credible disaster risk reduction management. It is not easy to keep up with climate change. Our country's geographic location compounds our precarious situation. We have realized that because of these factors, we must continuously study and make innovations in the enhancement of our DRRM system. Our agencies and organizations are therefore called to jointly work in this cooperative endeavor. Our distinct capabilities and specialties would assist us in creating the substantial difference in disaster prevention and mitigation, disaster preparedness, disaster response, and disaster rehabilitation and recovery. Thus, the need for us to identify and be truly aware of our roles and responsibilities in times of disasters and calamities. All of our local chief executives in the country must be well coordinated on their actions in every step of our disaster operations. We need to clearly understand our specific tasks and functions and totally focus on its execution. The yearly advent of typhoons and other disasters have afforded us with worthy lessons and enabled us to realize our mistakes and strive for improvement. We are aware, of course, that we may not be able to attain total perfection in the conduct of our disaster operations because of the complexity and uniqueness of every disaster or calamity. Nevertheless, we could prevent threats to loss of lives and damage to properties through a well-executed DRRM system. Today, let us learn together so we could work better as a team. In so doing, our people will benefit from the efficiency and effectiveness of our DRRM system. Ultimately, our country shall stand as a model for disaster resilience. This shall not only redound to the enhancement of our national security and safety, but for the members of the international community to emulate our example. I wish you all the best in this patriotic endeavor. Magandang umaga.
Thank you very much, Secretary Gazmin. And that ends the opening ceremonies. We shall now have a 5-minute break before we proceed to the audio-video presentation about disasters in the country. Thank you.
Send ko lang po si Governor again.
Among the most destructive typhoons, claim a total of 32,245 lives from 1917 to 2012.
Its vulnerability and susceptibility in its coping and adaptive capacities. In 2009, 36 in 2011, the World Philippine Area of Responsibility, of which 6 portions in the For the past 10 years, from 2002 to 2012, 53% billion pesos cost of damages. 2011, 185 dead, 191 injured, and 26 missing. 3.5 billion cost of damages. 2012, 180 dead, 33 injured, and 140 missing. 3.9 billion pesos cost of damages.
Sa States, muli sinabi ng mga kailan. Sagasaan kami ng mga pangyo, tapos yung bahay namin na tumumba, tapos tapos sa tubig na dala. Yung anak ko parang nakumahaya. Buti na lang, nailigtas siya sa lunas at tayo na tayo pa talaga.
Honorable Secretary Voltaire D. Gazmin, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. As the Executive Director of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, it is my honor to present the state of disaster risk reduction and management in the Philippines. This presentation will cover the following: an overview of our situation in the past 2 years, a revisiting of the legal basis of our disaster risk reduction management policies, a brief discussion on current DRRM efforts, and the challenges that we must confront together. The Philippines ranked number 1 in the top 10 countries by number of reported events in 2011, according to the USAID Office for Foreign Disaster Assistance. During that year, the country was hit by numerous hazards, the most notable of which was the devastating Typhoon Pablo, highlighting our continuing vulnerability to disasters given our location in the Pacific. We were also number 2 in terms of disaster mortality in 2011, second only to Japan, which lost more citizens due to the March 11, 2011 earthquake and tsunami that claimed almost 20,000 lives. However, our mortality rate is only 5th in terms of population density at 2.1 deaths per 100,000 population. Furthermore, according to the World Risk Index 2012, the Philippines ranks 3rd out of 173 countries based on exposure to hazards. In that same year, we were hit by Typhoon Pablo, and this shattered assumptions about disaster impacts on areas that are not frequently visited by typhoons. With Typhoon Pablo casualties reaching 1,067 dead, 2,668 injured, 834 is still missing, 216,817 damaged houses, and an estimated 40 billion in total damages. All these incidents triggered the chairperson of the National Council to call all of us today in order to revisit our country's DRRM and come up with a more comprehensive and united stand to further develop our capacity and resilience. Contemporary efforts in DRRM evolved from Presidential Decree 1566 of June 1978, which aimed to strengthen the Philippine disaster control capability and establish the National Program on Community Disaster Preparedness. Over the years, the basic provisions of PD 1566 proved insufficient, thus leading to the passage of Republic Act 10121 in May of 2010. Republic Act 10121 is now focused on strengthening the Philippine disaster risk reduction and management system. It likewise provides for the adoption of a national disaster risk reduction and management framework and plan, as well as providing funds thereof. Hence, the Republic Act signaled the paradigm shift from reactive disaster management to a holistic, comprehensive, integrated, proactive, and multi-sectoral approach on disaster management. From the top-down and centralized approach, the new law promotes a bottom-up participatory disaster risk reduction. Likewise, instead of viewing disasters as merely a function of physical hazards, the Act considers them as a reflection of vulnerability. Its integrated approach to social and human development generally adopts a more proactive stance. Likewise, it provided an expanded membership to the previous National Disaster Coordinating Council from 19 to 44 members. The new law transformed the National Disaster Coordinating Council to the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. Is still headed by the Secretary of National Defense, but with 4 vice chairpersons, namely the Secretary of DOST for Prevention and Mitigation, the Secretary of DILG for Preparedness, the Secretary of DSWD for Response, and the Director General of NEDA for Rehabilitation and Recovery. Aside from membership of government agencies, the Council now includes financial institutions, local government agencies, the private sector, and civil society organizations, which reflects the whole of society approach on disaster risk reduction and management. And in compliance with Republic Act 10121, the Council adopted in June 2011 the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Framework, with a vision of attaining a safer, adaptive, and disaster-resilient Filipino communities towards sustainable development. The framework shows that mitigating the potential impacts of risk, preventing hazards, and being prepared for disasters will substantially reduce loss of life and damages to social, economic, and environmental sectors. These positive changes will be complemented by mainstreaming disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation measures into our national and local development plans as a major step in refocusing our efforts towards achieving our goals. The Council further crafted the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Plan covering the period 2011 to 2028 to coincide with the National Climate Change Action Plan of the Philippines. The long-term goals of the plan correspond to the 4 thematic areas of prevention and mitigation, preparedness, response, rehabilitation, and recovery efforts. Based on the framework and plan, the Council undertakes various efforts to reduce the risk of disasters. In the area of prevention and mitigation, the Council prioritizes the installation of early warning systems. It also conducts nationwide flood forecasting, monitoring, and geohazard mapping, and provides inputs to comprehensive land use planning, while building and safety standards are also enforced. In addition, Engineering interventions and flood control measures are also being done to mitigate the impacts of hazards. A concrete intervention is highlighted by the nationwide operational assessment of hazards, better known as Project NOAA, and implemented by the Department of Science and Technology. The NOAA website is accessible and user-friendly as a decision-making tool in terms of early warning and preparedness measures for the local government units. The production of a more detailed mapping by using 1:10,000 scale with an assessment of possible relocation or evacuation sites in each locality. Aside from landslide susceptibility maps developed by MGB, flood-prone areas are already identified based on the leader project of Roxas DOST. Moreover, active fault lines and trenches have long been identified and disseminated by people. In the aspect of disaster preparedness, efforts in contingency planning have been continuing since the issuance of a contingency planning manual in 2007. Agencies concerned are also prepositioning equipment and supplies in preparation for anticipated events. We are continuously implementing necessary measures to upgrade the capability of our operations and coordination centers as we expand our capacity for organizing, training, and equipping of responders. At the community level, we have been organizing volunteers on top of disaster trainings and drills. In response to actual calamities and disasters, search, rescue, and retrieval operations are immediately conducted, followed by humanitarian aid, relief, and health services. We also provide temporary shelter, water, sanitation, and hygiene. Sequential reconstruction of damaged settlements is undertaken unless resettlement is seen as a better option. There is a provision for livelihood while restoration and improvement of damaged facilities are effected by concerned local and national agencies. The ultimate objective of these efforts in general is to build back better communities. Notwithstanding our efforts on DRRM, challenges remain. In the aspect of prevention and mitigation, for instance, the identification and assessment of hazards needs more emphasis. On the other hand, there is a need to restudy forecasting terminologies and systems for better appreciation and understanding by the general public. We must also improve the appreciation of risk factors at the local level, especially those living in vulnerable areas. Meanwhile, strict adherence to building codes is essential to ensure the safety of both public and private structures. In flood-prone areas, we must address the inadequacy of flood control structures. In the aspect of preparedness, among the areas that need more efforts are the following: the integration of hazard assessments into the comprehensive land use plans, the completion of local DRRM plans, the organization of community volunteers, training and equipage of responders, and the enhancement of coordination centers. As experienced in the case of Sandong and Pablo, the role of community-based responders and volunteers were proven to be indispensable. Challenges in response include the imperative for the immediate establishment of the incident command system. We need to prioritize the development of well-trained and well-equipped responders. In cases where the assistance of international agencies will be requested, we must rationalize such humanitarian assistance to the coordinated conduct of rapid needs assessment among the national government agencies, local government units, and international donor agencies. A key challenge in the aspect of recovery and rehabilitation is to rationalize access to calamity funds. Due to limited appropriations every year, It matters as to how much is being requested, for what purpose, and with respect to prioritization of support. Another challenge in terms of policy is the mandatory creation of local disaster risk reduction and management offices and the corresponding funding for plantilla positions to permanently man the local DRRM offices. This provision of Republic Act 10121 should be given priority in order to institutionalize DRRM at the local level. Moreover, the preparation and completion of a standard local DRRM plan should be undertaken before the onset of the rainy season. Likewise, it is high time that DRRM terminology should be laymanized and appropriately disseminated so that ordinary citizens will be more empowered to make sound decisions in their own households. Lastly, the rationalization of hazard map scale should be done similar to the READY project on hazards mapping and assessment for effective community-based disaster risk management. In closing, let me cite the President's statement in his State of the Nation address in 2012, and I quote, "Ang sitwasyon sa disaster risk reduction and management, dati, ang gobyernong dapat tumutulong nang hihingi ng tulong. Ngayon, nasa Pasipiko pa lang ang bagyo, alam na kung saan idedestino ang ayuda at may malinaw ng plano upang maiwasan ang peligro." Unquote. As this President's statement speaks for itself, we are left with a bigger challenge of living up to the expectations of our country and people. Now, more than ever, we all need to do our share to improve the state of DRRM in the Philippines. And to complement this presentation, let me show you images in the immediate aftermath of Typhoon Pablo in Davao Oriental. May these images inspire all of us to action. This ends my presentation. Thank you and good day.
Pangatlo, ayon sa pag-asa that by 2020, dry season will be drier, wet season will be wetter. Ano pong impact nito sa ating importanteng sektor tulad po ng agrikultura? At pang-apat, nakita na po natin na sa lahat ng mga listahan sa buong mundo, ang Pilipinas ay laging nangunguna o isa sa mga nangunguna. Pero ito po ang mga listahan na ayaw natin maging pangnahan. Either kung saan kang listahan tumitingin, either pangatlo, panglima, o pang-anim ang Pilipinas. Pangatlo, panglima, pang-anim ang Pilipinas sa isa sa pinaka-vulnerable sector sa buong mundo. Alam na po natin mga bagyo at pingsanang dinudulot nito. Noong 2009, ay ito po muna ang ating pag-usapan tungkol sa 1 degree. Ano nga po ba ang ibig sabihin na pag 1 degree na ang pagtaas ng ating temperatura? Ayon sa siyensa, kung kayo po ay naalala niyo pa si Vice President Al Gore na nanalo ng Nobel Peace Prize, kasama po yung IPCC experts o yung mga scientists na kasama na nagsabi na ito po ang magiging impact ng climate change. 4 po sa mga scientists dito ay Pilipino. Ngayon po, ang Climate Change Commission at ang buong gobyerno ay nakikipagtulungan sa 4 na mga experts upang maintindihan pa natin na mas maigi ang pagbabago ng panahon. Sabi nila na pag umabot na po daw sa increase in temperature ng buong mundo at 1 degree, there will be an impact on food, there will now be an impact on water, we will see impact on our ecosystem. Malamang po sa inyong mga lugar, katulad po sa amin sa Surigao, which is a coastal area, nakakakita na po tayo ng pagbaba ng ating pangingisda. Nakikita na rin po natin yung coral bleaching. Ito po yung tinatawag nating reduction of fish yield dahil hindi lang po sa overfishing, but also the increase in temperature of our oceans. At sinasabi po ng ating mga scientists, Ang extreme weather events na pag umabot ka ng 1 degree, makakakita ka na ng extreme weather events. Ang katanungan, kung bakit ang ating data as only 0.57, nakakakita na tayo ng extreme weather events. Yun po, kasi ang ating pag-aaral ay inumpisahan lang natin yung data available ay noong 1950s. Ang global temperature po ay nasa 0.8 degrees na. Inumpisahan nila i-observe ito in the late 1800s. So, posible po na sa Pilipinas, the increase in temperature is already consistent with the global temperature of around 0.8. If we continue to do the business as usual, if we continue to emit greenhouse gases that causes global warming, then it is projected the 1 degree increase will happen and we will see this impact. And the scientists have said that if it reaches 2 degrees, it will be a point of no return. We're here not to be afraid, but we are here to understand. Humanity have survived for so long. This is something we can adapt to. This summit is important for us to understand the integration of DRR and CCA, not only because we need these resources, so that we will fully understand that all initiatives and addressing disasters cannot be done by one agency alone. It will require the convergence of all other agencies, and the support to the local government must be clear and precise and early. So where are we right now? In 2009, Congress passed the Climate Change Act, creating the Climate Change Commission. They have placed the highest accountability in addressing climate change to the highest official of the land. The President is the chairperson of the Commission. I am the vice chairperson. To save on cost, on salary, they also made me executive director of the Secretariat, which is the Climate Change Office. That is okay, as long as it's for love of country, but that's what the law says. Under 2 other commissioners are Commissioner Gerson Alvarez, the former senator, and Commissioner Nadire Sanyo. And 2 important plans were required under the law to create and pass the National Climate Change Action Plan, signed and approved by the President in November 2011. And after the National Climate Change Action Plan, the law also requires the Local Climate Change Action Plan. This is where the Climate Change Commission and the OCD and the NDRRMC needs to sit down more closely. Because we feel, a Climate Change Commission, that there is no need for us to require local government for another plan. No standalone plan, please. So we understand this need and too much work on the part of the LGUs. That's why on the next slide that I will present, this is where we feel that we can help the LGU and understand how we will be able to help the local government come up with your local climate change action strategies in your existing plans. And just last year, realizing that there is really a need to put more support, the President also signed a law creating the People's Survival Fund. This is on top of the existing funds that you have right now. We need to explain what makes this different. I will present that later in my next slide. Section 2 of that particular law specifically states that there is a need to integrate both DRR and CCA because they are closely related. And we are considering that climate change is almost there. It's no longer in the future. We will consider infusion of climate change adaptation strategies to your existing DRRM plans and consider it as enhancing the DRR plans.
Equipment, etc. So the activities under preparedness would be the conduct of trainings on disaster preparedness and response, search, rescue, and retrieval operations. Similarly, we would also like to acknowledge the presence of the Secretary of Interior and Local Government, Honorable Mar A. Roxas II. Mayor Lawrence Luz, and Mayor Donato D. Marcos. So again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the plenary session of the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management National Summit. Before anything else, on behalf of 10 governors, 3 vice governors, 264 NDRRM member agencies, and 510 participants from LDRRMOs, CSOs, INGOs, and
USEC, Eduardo D, Rosario, fellow workers in our National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council or NDRRMC, fellow workers in government, mga kababayan, ladies and gentlemen. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome all of you to the plenary session of our National Summit on Disaster Risk Reduction and Management this afternoon. I am truly pleased with the outcome of our National Summit on DRRM for our local chief executives. Indeed, I wish to thank you for your attendance and active participation in your summit. Allow me now to proceed to the synthesis of the learning discussion we made and the conclusion we achieved. Our country has been experiencing disasters which have brought more tragic consequences than before. This is the outcome of climate change. Nevertheless, we still have a lot of things to do and complete. The declaration of commitment to DRRM of all the local chief executives ascertains that we can truly do this. We have identified our specific roles and responsibilities that relate to the integration of the DRRM and climate change adaptation into the comprehensive land use plan that gives importance to capacitating the communities up to the barangay level, as well as involving all civil society organizations and other stakeholders in all DRRM decisions and actions. Moreover, we have heard of the experiences shared to us by our local chief executives on the lessons they have learned from past calamities. We have been able to come up with plans of action through the LDRRM plan template, including databasing, barangay contingency planning, localized hazard mapping, organization of community volunteers, to name a few. Thus, we need to continuously strengthen our DRRM tools in disaster prevention and mitigation, disaster preparedness, disaster response, and disaster rehabilitation and recovery. The tools checklist that we have created is expected to give us the proper direction in our DRRM. Accordingly, we likewise need to continue sharpening these tools to keep them attuned and ready to address any kind of disaster at any given time and place. Our program shall be supported by the Joint Memorandum Circular on allocation and utilization of LDRRM funds. All this, we hope, will keep us from repeating the same mistakes and help us attain a safe, adaptive, and disaster-resilient country. I am trustful that our National Summit on DRRM has achieved our objective. The attendees, particularly our local chief executives, have without doubt gained clearer understanding of their roles, duties, and responsibilities in DRRM. Let us therefore be vigilant as true guardians in the conduct of correct disaster management practices and be of genuine service to our country and citizens. Thank you and good afternoon.
thank you very much, Secretary Gazmin. We shall now have to act as witnesses. May we call on the representatives from the following civil society organizations: Ateneo de Manila University School of Government, World Vision Development Foundation, Disaster Risk Reduction Network Philippines, Center for Disaster Preparedness Foundation Incorporated, and from the private sector, Corporate Network for Disaster Response. The joint memorandum circular is a living document. The different agencies involved and the LGUs and CSO partners will continue to evaluate its responsiveness and introduce amendments or changes to improve its responsiveness.
Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Binabati po natin ang chairman ng National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Council, Secretary Gazmin. Palakpakan po natin. Nandito rin po ang pamunuan ng iba't ibang mga samahan ng local chief executive sa hanay ng mga gobernador, ang pangulo ng Governors League at kasama na rin yung sa ulang, walang iba po kundi Governor Boy Umali. Palakpakan po natin. Nakita ko papasok dito si Gob Joey Salceda, nandyan pa ba? Si Gob Willie ng Bulacan, si Gob Dolpo ng Davao Norte, Bonji D. Nandito rin po si Gob Chunky Uy and Gob Eddie Bong Plaza. Nandito sila, palakpakan po natin ang ating mga gobernador. Sa pamunuan naman ng sahanay ng ating mga city mayors, Mayor Lawrence Cruz, palakpakan po natin. Alam niyo po yung Iligan, kung maalala ninyo, isa ito sa talagang natamaan, no? Nasaktan ng Sendong at isa siya, yung kanyang mga ipinapamahagi dito sa inyong seminar conference ay bunga ng first-hand experience. Kaya napakahalaga, nagpapasalamat kami sa inyong sharing, Lawrence. Nandito rin po ang kung bawat makita ng ating Pangulo ay tinutukoy niyang isang Marcos na kaibigan niya, walang iba po kundi si Kadoneng Marcos ng LFP. At lahat po ng ating mga mayors na naandito, all of the barangay officials, binabati rin po natin. Napakarami daw ang lumahok dito sa ating conference. Si Yusek Ed Del Rosario, Executive Director ng NDRRMC, Assistant Secretary Janet Abuel ng DBM, palakpakan din po natin. Dahil kung napagmasdan po ninyo, kaming dalawa ni Sec Bots, pinirmahan po namin ang dokumento. Pero walang saysay yun hanggang pirmahan po ito ni Secretary Abad dahil ang pera magagaling sa DBM. Laksan-laksan natin ang palakpak kay Sec Abuel, no? Na para ma-remind na si Sec Butch na dapat din niyang pirmahan. Sa ating mga kasama mula sa DILG, pinamumunuan ni Yusek Austere Panadero. Where is Austere? Dito ba? He's here earlier. Nandito. And all the other members of the NDRRMC, governors, vice governors, mayors, barangay officials, NGOs, CSOs, at lahat po ng mga stakeholders, magandang hapon po muli sa ating lahat. Tungkulin ko po na basahin, no? Supposed to be, nandito po ang ating Pangulo, subalit dahil may napakahalagang mga pangyayari, mga bagong developments ay hindi siya makakarating. Supposed to be, babasahin ko po, ang aking tungkulin ay babasahin itong Declaration of Commitment by Local Chief Executives to DRRM action. No? Subalit, maasahan po ninyo na faithfully, dadalhin ko po namin ni Sec Bots ito sa Pangulo at ipapaalam sa kanya yung inyong commitment, no? Para matugunan ang pangangailangan dito sa disaster risk reduction and risk management. Para sa ating mga LGU officials, gusto ko lang pong ipaabot sa inyo na napakahalaga nitong dream na ito, DRRM, the dream itself, disaster risk reduction and management. Si Sec Bots, ang ibang mga cabinet secretaries, ang ibang mga nakatrabaho ng Pangulo ay testigo, no? Witness na isa ito sa mga pinag-aabalahan talaga ng Pangulo. Sabi nga sa amin ng Pangulo sa kabinete na alam nyo, 2 Pasko na ito na lumipas, bawat Pasko, 1,000 ang namamatay. No? Si Sendong, si Pablo. Hindi na natin masabi kung ano ang takbo ng climate change, kung ano ang takbo o ang rota na dadaanan nitong mga bagyong ito. Dati-rati, magmula sa Samar, tungo sa Bicol, tungo sa Region 2, paakyat, tungo sa Taiwan hanggang palabas na. Ngayon, habang tumatagal ang taon, no, palapit na palapit sa Disyembre, imbes na pataas, yung anggulo nagpapalit at patawid na ng Kabisayaan, yung buong Kabisayaan o kaya yung buong Kamindanawan ang nasasalanta, ang nararagasa nitong mga bagyong ito. Kaya ang Pangulo natin, isa ito sa kanyang talagang pinagkakaabalahan, isa ito sa kanyang pinagtutuunan talaga ng pansin. Kaya matutuwa talaga ito sa inyong pinapaabot na commitment na hindi lamang makilahok, hindi lamang na sumama, pero talagang maging fully engaged, no? Dito maging committed nang sa ganon itong disaster risk reduction management ay matugunan natin. Dahil hindi po talaga natin makukontrola yung nature, no? Kung kailan darating ang bagyo, kung gaano kalakas yan, kung gaano kadami ang ulan at kung gaano kalakas ang hangin. Pero meron po tayong magagawa para sa paghanda na kung sakaling dumating man itong mga bagyong ito ay ma-minimize natin or maiwasan natin yung kaakibat madalas na kamatayan, casualties, pagsisira at iba pa na nangyayari sa ating mga komunidad. Sa ating mga LGU officials, bilang isang tip sa inyo para makuha po ninyo yung atensyon ng Pangulo. Isa sa pinakamahusay na pamamaraan ay magpakita ng magandang DRRRM action, no? Disaster Risk Reduction Management Action. Isa ito sa talagang tinitingnan niya, pinag-uukulan niya ng pansin, kinakalampag niya po kami ni Sec Bolts, ang DNR, ang iba pang mga ehensya na talagang pagtuunan ito ng pansin. Sabi nga niya, 2 Pasko na ito, 1,000 ang namamatay tuwing Pasko. Sana naman sa darating ay hindi na. At tutulong tayo sa lahat ng mga LGUs para matugunan nila ang paghahanda, ang risk reduction and management nang sa ganun ay hindi masaktan ang ating mga kababayan, hindi unnecessarily sa kapabayaan, sa negligence, no? Ay hindi sila masasaktan dahil ang ating mga LGUs ay hindi natugunan ang trabaho. So sa ating mga LGUs na kapartner ng national government, maraming salamat, congratulations sa inyong commitment at saka sa inyong pagtugon dito sa ating programa na mabawasan, ma-risk reduce, no? Yung pagsasalanta sa atin itong mga disasters na ito at tulong-tulong sama-sama po tayo para makapagsilbi po tayo sa ating tunay na mga boss, ang ating mga mamamayan. Maraming salamat, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat po, Secretary Roxas. At this point, we shall now proceed Mayor Lawrence Lush Cruz, representing the League of Cities of the Philippines, and Honorable Donato B. Marcos from the province of Bulacan, the National President of the League of Municipalities of the Philippines, to please sign the Declaration of Commitment. To act as witnesses will be the Secretary of National Defense, the Honorable Voltaire D. Gazmin, the Secretary of Interior and Local Government, Honorable Mar A. Rojas, Assistant Secretary Janet Abuel, on behalf of Honorable Florencio Abad, and the 5 CSO representatives from Ateneo de Manila University School of Government, World Vision Development Foundation, Disaster Risk Reduction Network Philippines, the Center for Disaster Preparedness Foundation Incorporated, and the Corporate Network for Disaster Response. Thank you very much. To introduce our guest of honor and speaker, may we now have the Administrator of the Office of Civil Defense and the the Executive Director of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, the Honorable Undersecretary Eduardo.
Ladies and gentlemen, our guest of honor and speaker for our National Summit on Disaster Risk Reduction and Management for local chief executives is His Excellency President Benigno S. Aquino III. To deliver the message of the President is the Chairperson of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, the Honorable Secretary of National Defense, Voltaire D. Gazmin.
I'm honored to speak on behalf of the President today. Allow me to share with you his message for this occasion. June 30, 2016 is always at the back of my mind. To me, it is not just the date I stepped down from office. It is a deadline to set in place the necessary reforms that will make certain that the gains we enjoy today will continue and lead to even more progress. Our campaign is not merely for positive change today, but for the institutionalization of good governance so that its benefits may be felt even by the Filipinos of tomorrow. Freedom from unease and stability, which stems from properly addressing risk, is among the goals that pertain to our vision of institutionalized integrity in governance. For all our natural resources, we are also at a disadvantage when it comes to disaster risk. The World Risk Index for 2012 cited our country as the third most vulnerable to disasters and natural hazards, while an earlier report known as the Climate Change Vulnerability Index rated us as the sixth most vulnerable nation out of 170 countries in terms of exposure to impacts of climate change. As public servants, we are mandated to protect our people, to uphold their interests, and to keep them safe. It is our job to make absolutely certain that none of our countrymen are left defenseless. While we cannot steer storms away from our towns and cities, we have the capacity to better equip our people from disaster and calamities. This is why we gather here today to develop strategies much needed to ensure that our communities are safer and more prepared. We recognize that together we can weather the storms that we face as a nation. This means putting a premium on information sharing and the harmonization of efforts across the entire spectrum of governance and civic engagement. If we are to succeed, if we are to rise from devastation, we can only do it as one nation, which is why we are grateful for the invaluable support of our regional disaster risk reduction management councils, the academe, and civil society, and why we are continuing our call for our countrymen to be actively engaged and to fulfill their individual roles in the collective task of building and at times rebuilding this nation. Our strategy has been twofold. First, to engage stakeholders in formulating the steps we should take as a nation, and second, to strengthen our key institutions in order for them to be able to meet the challenges of our time in an efficient manner. An example of this is our armed forces. Through our modernization and capability upgrade program, we are gearing up our troops with more modern equipment that will help them better respond to crises and which will allow them to efficiently defend our borders and assist more of our countrymen. This enables us to conduct faster operations, penetrate difficult areas, and tactically preposition our assets and resources. Another example of a service strengthened to better serve our citizenry is our National Weather Agency, PAGASA. When in the past this agency was the subject of ridicule, now it truly lives up to its name. Through the installation of more Doppler radars, PAGASA now provides real-time data that is more reliable and more accurate. I am glad to know that by 2014, we expect to have 4 more operational radars in addition to the 7 already in operation. This will provide us with much needed data which will allow us to inform our countrymen in advance. For our communities, we also have our READY project, which is aimed at developing a systematic approach to community-based risk management. I am told that multi-hazard mapping for the 28 priority provinces in our country has been completed. This means that more of our countrymen and local government leaders will be more informed as they craft their appropriate programs for their communities. We also have our geo-hazard maps, which outline potentially risky areas. By disseminating this, we provide our local government units and our citizenry the knowledge they need to make the credible choices. Add to this, our DILG has issued calamity response protocols to our local governments, helping them guide our people during times of calamities. But disseminating information is only one aspect of disaster risk reduction. We are also mitigating the foreseen consequences brought about by man-made activity like illegal logging. This is why, in 2011, I signed an executive order from natural hostilities. From revitalizing our line agencies to instilling a culture of accountability and responsibility, this is what we are doing. We are empowering our people to be more informed partners in decision making. Every bridge built, every road constructed, every community made safe and responsive to calamities leads to a society where our citizens can grow and achieve their fullest potential without fear of neglect. Now, our people have a partner and a protector in their government. Disaster risk reduction and management is about crafting a long-term strategy by listening to stakeholders, opening avenues of discourse, and implementing programs with the people at front and center of our agenda. At the core of our strategy is the empowerment of local governments and communities. Through you, it is my hope that you can inspire more of our countrymen to become partners in meaningful change. This is our common vision, to enable our people to take hold of their lives in a safer, democratic society. Together, we have made this possible. Let us sustain our momentum towards its full realization. Thank you and good day.
Thank you very much, Secretary Gazmin. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the National Summit on the Disaster Risk Reduction Management for Local Chief Executives. We will have photo opportunities after this, and of course, you're all invited for dinner at forums 2 and 3. Again, we thank you all for your presence. Have a great evening, and mabuhay po tayong lahat.